All right, Sean and Donald, take it away.
Yep. I just wanted to talk about, actually, it's good that Kushal's on the call as well. Any features in 11.11 that we think might be a good fit for using GraphQL on the front end, well, to communicate between the front end and the back end. So on the back end side, we've been doing some work this release, which I'm not sure we will get 100% finished, but we'll get pretty close to get this GraphQL implementation to a point where we feel confident in sort of making it more widely available. And the other part of making it more widely available is exposing more stuff from it. So at the moment, for instance, we don't expose groups and we don't expose epics. So I spoke to Brett about this yesterday because he's been doing a lot of the backend work here. And he said that probably a smallish feature would be a good fit. Now, looking at 11.11, I think Donald came to the same conclusion. There aren't that many features that need both front end and back end in 11.11. So the one the one I found that we think might work is this one, which is about viewing the epic tree in an epic. To do that with GraphQL would mean that it would take longer than if we do it any other way, because we'll have to sort of, do some stuff from scratch, but it should give us good momentum going forward. Kushal, I guess you might not be working on it, but you know a lot about how Epic's front end works. So how do you feel about that, first of all?
Yeah, so right now we are having a bunch of APIs just to access Epics. For example, if you look at the roadmap, the main roadmap page, then right now we are relying on query params if we want to embed roadmap within the Epic page. So for example, in 11.10, we are introducing roadmap tab within Epics. And currently, we are reusing the API that we already had for roadmap, just that we are adding a query param which will accept an Epic ID. And then we would fetch all the child epics for that particular epic, and then we would render the roadmap. But in future releases, we would want to fetch descendants as well. So right now, there is only one level of depth that we are fetching while rendering the roadmap in the epic. And as far as GraphQL usage is concerned, I think that is one area where we can have a common API for both the actual roadmap page as well as roadmap within the Epics page, where we just pass on what are the properties that we need. Because currently, if you look at the main roadmap view, there we support query param based filters because we have the filters search bar. We have preset support. We have ability to switch sorting orders. None of those exist in Epic's page because there we just render the roadmap. So we can stream down what we get from the backend and then use it within the Epic page. So that is one area where I think we can use GraphQL. Another one is that right now, when you load up Epic page, initial load includes data from Haml, which includes Epic title, description, and all the sidebar items, which would include start and finish dates, participants, labels, and notification, etc. But the issues list and epics list is something that we make another request as soon as the page loads. And that's when we fetch additional data, like what are the related issues, what are the related epics. But if we want to make whole thing asynchronous, then that is also one area where we can leverage GraphQL.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, actually. I forgot that Heinrich had created an issue about how the roadmaps, for instance, does support all this stuff that isn't actually needed for roadmaps and does return stuff that's not needed for roadmaps. So perhaps instead of doing it for a new feature, we could do it for this existing roadmaps feature and try and convert that to GraphQL first, which would reduce the risk a little bit, because if we don't do it, roadmap still works. And if we do it, great. Whereas if we're doing it for a new feature, then if we don't do it, the feature doesn't ship, and if we do, then the feature does ship. So yeah.
Sure. If you don't mind me interrupting, Sean, is GraphQL the future? A future feature? Is that the future, and we're set on it at GitLab? Are we still or are we still in exploratory research?
As far as I'm aware, the idea is that we should try to build new features using GraphQL where possible, which at the moment isn't many places where that's possible. Donald, I don't know if you've got a different understanding.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out by looking at to see if we have a plan for GA, and it looks like we do. So I'm going under the assumption, and from my communication with Tim, it sounds like that is, we're still figuring out the edge cases, but that is the future essentially.
What do you mean by going by GA? So if we did the original suggestion and do the whatever Epix tree using it, is it like a feature toggle? Like I thought it's already like part of the code, and then we're just using it for new features and so on and so forth. Or is my understanding correct?
I think we are putting, right, Sean? We're putting any of the GraphQL stuff behind feature flag. But in the case where it's a new feature, if we were to do a new feature, I don't think we would build it both ways and then feature flag.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So if it's a new feature, it would probably just be that new feature is behind the feature flag. If it's an existing feature, then it would probably be like,
right, okay.
If the feature flag's on, then we use GraphQL. If the feature flag's off, then we don't use GraphQL.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify, like the GA comment was what was scaring me. But okay, so it sounds like it's available in the code, and we're just using it for different places. So then the next question is, if it is the future, then every new feature we built that is not using GraphQL is dead, is it not?
Yes, but it's low interest debt. Like it's not like we're not ready to like refactor the issues list using GraphQL. I wouldn't say right now. So,
but that's sunk cost. Oh, you mean, what do you mean by issues lists?
The work that Constance is doing on like moving that to Vue. But what I mean is like even when we say we're using GraphQL for everything new, the migration plan is to make the existing REST API use the GraphQL API internally somehow. So from the front end perspective, that doesn't matter. It's just that like the more times we can use GraphQL directly from the front end, the better like experience we can get about like what works, what doesn't work, what we need to consider, stuff like that. So like Jan's on the call, I see now as well. Like Jan, I know you've been doing some work on this. I don't know if you've got anything to add about what's a good candidate for a GraphQL feature at the moment.
Right. So sorry, Jan. Before you respond, sorry, Sean, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I wanted to understand this, and maybe like even the technical piece. I don't think I need to understand clearly, and I definitely trust the team in picking the right one. But when you're saying pick one that's appropriate, I understand the desire to have something quick and something usable, and I appreciate that. And you're saying like, for example, 10794 Vue Epic Tree and Epic. I appreciate you saying that it would take more work to do it in GraphQL, but my concern is if we don't do it in GraphQL, are we incurring that debt? So why don't we actually do the more work on it? And same with any new feature and plan. And I'd be proud to be the first team at GitLab to really invest our time in doing it and doing it the right way. I don't mind doing it slower.
Yeah. Okay. Like, I mean, yeah, the question is really like, it introduces some risk. Like, are you willing to take that risk? If the answer is yes, then
if the risk is just more time, that's fine. But I wanted to clarify if the risk was like, oh, we're not all in for GraphQL as like we're all in for Vue.js like as of
no, right. So the risk is more like we might discover something that needs, I think it's unlikely, but we might discover something that means we need to turn off our GraphQL API entirely, which would also turn off this feature. But that's a lot of what we've been doing this release. Right. Like for instance, Jan's been adding monitoring to the API so that we can manage that. Brett's been doing some work on you can control how complex the backend considers a GraphQL request to be, and then it will refuse requests that are too complex, stuff like that.
So yeah, so the way I see it, just any new feature should be using just our newest technologies, and we shouldn't incur debt. So in the same way that when we did this thing with related merge request design or issue design, somebody said that front end team here said that we needed to do it in Vue. And so I view that as, yes, that's the way we do it, because it's a new feature and therefore we use the new technology. We don't keep using the old technology and incurring debt. And then the discussion about revamping old features, I think that's a harder discussion, but I think I would be comfortable just setting a rule, just any new feature we develop should be using our latest and greatest technology, and we shouldn't. Because to me that, yes, there's risks there, but I see that risk mitigated, or the opposite risk of not using the new technology a lot higher than trying to go fast and finding problems. And over time we'll reap the benefits. We'll learn all these things that you mentioned, Sean, that we might need to learn. We'll share it with other GitLabbers and so forth. So I think we should. To me, like the discussion here is, do we need to find a feature? No, because there's plenty of features that are new. So we'll just automatically use GraphQL for them. And if you're going to say maybe we should descope this one and focus on revamping an old one, I think that's a good discussion to have. But if nobody wants to entertain that right now, then there's actually, to me, we don't even have to discuss it. Just any new feature, we use the new GraphQL.
Yep. Okay. That works for me. I'm fine with that.
Yep, I agree too. I just want to confirm, there is no scenario where we say, we build this and we build everything we're building in GraphQL, where we say that GraphQL is not going to work. We're stepping back, and then we'll have to rewrite this stuff with RESTful, with the REST API. Are we there?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we're in that situation, but yeah, maybe we can't 100% guarantee that.
But I mean, but that's okay. But that's like a bigger GitLab problem, right? My point.
Yes, exactly. That wouldn't just be a plant problem.
Yeah, and then so if we are the ones that expose that problem and it costs us as a team, okay, I'm not too selfish about that in this particular case. It benefits all of GitLab, so let's do it.
Yeah, only minor comment regarding this. If we plan to add GraphQL support for each new feature or something like this, I agree that we should expect much slower progress, because from my brief check of GraphQL current state, I think there are many things to do, and many things are still missing. So, and I think we don't have yet best practice for how to solve all of them. So I guess it will require more investigation to
let's do it.
And all of this stuff.
Yeah, if we need to scope out a separate issue to surface that to other stakeholders within GitLab, I think we can do that. I wouldn't worry about that right now. I don't think we need to create an issue that says investigate.
I more expect that it will be on go when implementing new stuff.
But I mean, the whole point of this exercise, it's the latest technology. So the promise, to me, hopefully, is that in I don't know what, in 2-3 months time, we will all become GraphQL experts at GitLab, and things should actually be faster. There should be less bugs. There should be more performance. Right? I'm hoping that's true, right? I mean,
yeah, you are probably right. Personally, I'm not sure how fast we will be progressing with GraphQL itself. Okay. I don't know. There are still many questions even for me how to. So,
I don't mind being a test bed. I mean, that's what it sounds like from the caveats from the backend team here, saying you don't want to commit or promise anything. I think that's totally fair. But I don't mind. I've been told GraphQL is the future of GitLab, and you folks have confirmed it on this call, and we're recording it. So we'll hold each other accountable to that statement. And then let's do it. I'm on board.
Yeah. Alexandra, you had a question. I don't know if you want to say that out loud.
Yeah, so there are at least 2 FE features that are currently in works, related MRs and issue lists that are implemented in Vue, or actually ported to Vue from Haml. And like there was a decision a couple weeks ago that we would use REST API to get the data for those features. And now like having this discussion, it seems that we gotta like stop a bit on the backend part at least, and use GraphQL instead. So
I would say if they're
yeah,
ready
like so.
review.
Yeah, so there's two things there. First of all, exactly what Victor said. Like, if we've already started, like, don't stop and turn around, because like we're going to continue supporting the REST API. Second thing, I think refactors are actually like a trap for stuff like this, because if we're already refactoring the front end and we're changing the back end to use GraphQL at the same time, that like massively increases the amount of things that can go wrong with this refactor. And we know from previous refactors that we've done, like for instance, the merge request widgets or to merge request commenting, neither of which belong to plan now, but like,
but we already do
belong to discussion in the past. Like the refactor introduces a lot of like uncertainty, so it's better to like keep that the steps of that as like separated as possible. So even though it will be more work in theory, in total, to make the front end use the REST API and then make the front end use the GraphQL API, first of all, we don't need to initially, like, we don't need to rush to make the front end use the GraphQL API. And secondly, if we try to do both at once, we have a higher risk of something going badly wrong or something being held up for a long time because of something in some area of that, because there are more areas that we're touching at the same time.
Right. The thing is that like the features that are moved to view, like in the backend, there is still happening. The refactoring is still happening in the backend, because they were previously using like controllers endpoints, and now we're moving them to the REST API, which also requires some changes and adding data and so on. So I was just thinking that maybe instead of doing this work for the REST API, we would move on and do it for the GraphQL right away. But I mean, either way it works for me, if that's okay with the team.
Okay.
I'm just pointing out maybe it does make sense to not spend time in two places, or maybe it does.
Yeah, no, I think it does, just because like of what Jan said as well. Like we have so many open questions about using GraphQL for things like this that we wouldn't want to answer all those questions while potentially blocking the front end refactor or something. Like, if it's a smaller feature, like maybe we can block that feature, or maybe we can like, because it's also because the roadmap things are smaller. The epic tree thing is a smaller feature. Like worst case, like where it goes terribly wrong with GraphQL, we could probably just rewrite it to use a REST API and like write a REST API to do that. Whereas like here, if we've already started with a REST API, then we'd be doing the opposite before we even know that before we even have a reason to, essentially.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine either way. I'm just, yeah.
Cool. Annabelle, I think you're up next.
Really quickly, Sean and Donald, do you mind documenting this, or like, I'm sure we can remind each other on the merge request about this decision, but just wanted to make sure that like everybody on the plan engineering team knows this, so that there's no confusion and we don't have to waste cycles like asking each other like on every single issue type of thing.
I think for now we'll just take it as new features, which in this case is I think
I
just
mean,
this one in 11.11.
I mean, just communicating that. Okay, that's fine.
Oh right.
Yeah, I'll leave it to you two. Thank you. Annabelle, go ahead.
So each release, each each stage group is going to be taking a component and seeing it through from the documentation to the implementation within GitLab UI process. So this was announced on our UX front-end call, but I think it's been sort of slipping through the cracks. So starting with 11.11, I'm going to work with Donald to pick up a component. I'll do the documentation and implementation in Sketch, and then some front ender is going to be assigned and get that implemented in GitLab UI. It doesn't need to be implemented throughout the actual product, because that's going to be a whole new set of problems, but this is part of our push to get the design system where it needs to be. So I was just letting everyone know so that we sort of plan for this capacity, or plan our capacity for these things going forward for each release. I don't have the component yet because Tori's still working on getting the list ready, but I reached out to her to sort of select one and get ahead of it so that we're all ready to go for next milestone.
Thanks, Annabelle. I also heard the same message in the product meeting yesterday, and I asked Christy to put this in an issue. I think it was this topic. I thought there was a Google Doc that she had, or it might have been some different topic. I don't know if you've seen that, Annabelle. But
I haven't. I've been a little confused. I only got
Okay.
clarification. There's a Slack thread I linked to, which explains a little bit more, but it's still a little ambiguous. But I'll let everyone know everyone who needs to know what the component is that's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, help us as a UXer get us the great information. But no, thanks for that. And then, so from my perspective, anytime there's like a schedule thing, a prioritization thing, we get very sensitive. Product and other folks, because in the past we've struggled with this. And just for more context for the team, in the past, like we've toyed with ideas like we would have dedicated capacity, or we would say like engineering is responsible for bugs and product is not, and then engineering prioritizes bugs, or we always have engineering do a dedicated or only do performance, or product doesn't have to care. And so we purposely said that that's a bad idea. There's like many failure patterns there, and so everything technically should go through product. But I think what's worked really well in the plan team, and which I see this totally continuing to work with this change, is that in this particular case, I see front end and UX should be responsible for actually just managing this and saying very clearly to Victor, like, we're doing this for this month, and make sure it's scheduled, and keep me accountable that I don't keep pushing something to the next milestone, but that and then that I would schedule it, barring some really, really terrible thing that we have to like not do to make room, or not do this. So I just wanted to be clear that prioritization is always still going to be in product until something radically changes, but that I see more and more stakeholders and folks in the team to have more and more louder voice to support this. So it's like the GraphQL thing, I expect more from Donald and Sean saying like we need to refactor something and so on and so forth. So I think this is another one of those. Thank you, Annabelle. If nothing else, Kushal?
Yeah, so we have added the roadmap tab to the epics. I'll quickly share my screen and give the quick demo of how feature looks like, and share some of the known limitations that we have. Can you all see my screen? So as you can see, we now have a discussion tab and the roadmap tab within the epic. We have 3 epics added to this page, and all of those have certain start and finish dates defined. And when I click on roadmap, the roadmap view itself would be loading asynchronously. Currently, we have set its height limited to 600 px because there isn't any way where we could allow user to scroll the page, and then the moment user reaches to the end of the page, and we would basically stick these tabs at the top, like we would in case of merge request tabs, because the way we have implemented timeline scrolling for roadmap, some CSS limitations won't allow us to do that. So we have set fixed height to the roadmap view. Although in case there are too many epics added within an epic, user would be able to still scroll this list, but the timeline is endless scrollable, as it would be in case of normal roadmap view. And if any epic that is added within this list, which has dates coming into the future, it would get dynamically added, and the timeline would be rendered. Now looking at the limitations that I have mentioned here. So one glaring limitation here is that these tabs are not permalinkable. So if you have used merge request, then you would notice that any tab that you would click on merge requests would have its own URL. So for example, if you go to diff, or if you open pipelines or commits page within any merge request, URL would change. And this would essentially allow you to copy the URL and share it with someone, and the user would directly land onto that tab open by default. That's not the case here. When I was implementing these tabs, I looked at how tabs are implemented in case of merge request. and the implementation was not very clear, and it felt iffy to me. So I resorted not to use it. I would rather use a simpler implementation to have the permalinks, and it was doing so many things on tab switching in case of merge request. And that permalink feature has been around in merge request for quite long. So it is a lot of legacy code there, so we cannot directly reuse it in our case. But I don't see it as a blocker, at least for 11.10, because we only have 2 tabs for now. And although the permalinks are not in place, 11.11 will definitely change it, because in 11.11 we'll be working on FX tree view. There we would be adding 3rd tab, and then all 3 tabs will be permalinkable. So right now we only have 2 tabs, so it is fine for now not to have permalinks, but we'll have it essentially. So that is one thing I wanted to be everyone aware of. The second point that I have
question,
is,
Kushal. So meaning that whenever they go to the issue, the discussion tab will be by default loaded.
Yes,
Okay.
and that means that when the page is opened for the first time, we do not make any request to fetch roadmap data.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that also saves us making additional requests. So that is something
Right.
that I mentioned in earlier agenda as well. So like currently, when you load the page, there are 2 network requests that would happen. One
Okay.
happens right away when the page loads, which basically fetches this list. These 3 items get rendered asynchronously, and
Right.
then as long as you do not click on this tab, we do not make second request to fetch child epics once again. But the moment you click on roadmap for the first time, it would fetch in roadmap data again for all the child epics, and then we would render the timelines. So that is something that we can use GraphQL for, because right now when we make network request for rendering this list, it doesn't include date-related information. It only includes epic titles and status and IDs and other metadata. It doesn't include start and finish dates. So if we want to use those information, probably we can combine these 2 requests and make it into a single one where we fetch in all the necessary metadata and then render both the things at once. So that is one thing. So coming back to another point. So one thing is epic creation workflow. And this is something that we have discussed in the past as well. So currently, the only way to create epics is by going to the epics list page and clicking on new button, which would open a drop down where you can pass on the epic title and hit create. It would first create epic and then would navigate the page to open that epic page itself. And then you would be able to set additional items like dates, descriptions, etc. And that feels slightly out of context when you look at how issues and MR creation works, where we show full form at once and user can set all the necessary metadata and then hits create, and then issue or MR gets created. So is there any plans to have similar workflow for creating epics, at least on the main index page? Clicking new would open a new form where you can at least provide start, finish dates, labels, if not related epics and issues. Because I understand that if you want to add related epics and issues, there needs to be an epic entity existing in the database where you can establish relationships. So that might be a limitation why we have chosen the current design. But at least at the time of creation, we can certainly allow user to set both title descriptions, labels, as well as start and finish dates, and then hit create, and then it would create entire epic object in the backend, and then we can allow user to add further information like what are the related issues, what are the related epics. So just wanted to know what was the decision behind.
Yeah, I can answer that, Kushal. I think Alexis asked that as well recently. So that was something that I purposely wanted to do currently. So I don't like the new issue form. I want to get rid of it. Just there's an issue somewhere. I think it's too radical and people have pushed back on it. So to me, I think that's not a design that encourages forward thinking, collaboration, and so on and so forth, because it encourages you to do a lot of work beforehand before sharing your work, right? So that's the thinking that you want, and so that you want to create the object and it's there, and then people can use it right away. So obviously there's arguments against that, because you want to share it, and you want to have a good draft before it goes out to the world. But I've always been of the opinion that we should push toward the share mentality. So that's the sort of underlying reason I've always wanted issues to not have a form. And then so when we introduced a new concept called epics, I'm like, this is a great opportunity not to go down that path. And so therefore, I push for that. And then so the other benefit is just there's less UI, there's less code to maintain, less complexity, and so on and so forth. So your point about consistency is definitely valid. Your point about all those other things, like I said earlier, about having a draft mode for issues, maybe you want to mark it confidential right away. So that's another obvious one that you can have it. So until there's really strong arguments, and I could be convinced that we need a new epic form, then we can build it. We can have an issue for it. I don't think maybe somebody's created an issue for it. I don't think I've closed that proposal. So, so if you feel strongly about it, Kushal, please just create an issue. What I will comment is that I wasn't clear when you were touching on this, or maybe you weren't, but we're going to have the ability to create multiple epics in line, right? And so if anything, I think that's actually a better experience, or that's an argument to say that a dedicated web form for creating a new epic is actually less important, because now there's more ways to create epics, and you can create the relationships right away, and you create them, and then you click into them to make the changes. So to me, that's yet another, it's an argument to actually stay away from having the web form. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Other folks have strong opinions on that, or you want to rebut anything I just said, Kushal? Yeah, no, thank you for that, Kushal. That comes up every now and then, so I think that's a great thing. I think that, to me, creating a new epic on the list page is weird. It just feels weird as an experience, but I like the experience. Once you know it, it's like, to me, the best experience. But I think from maybe an expectation or like the light perspective, maybe it's not that great. I forget. I think Alexis brought this up as well, and I'm pretty sure I did create an issue where right now you can create an issue from an issue page itself. I think that's super useful, and I use that all the time. So I think that also makes sense for an epic, where you create an epic from epic itself. But I would say, like, it doesn't go to a new epic form. It's the same UI. It's a drop down. So I think I would be totally on board with that, because it's, I presume, a small change, and it's the consistency, and it would be useful.
Yeah, so current workflow is obviously faster. You can just click on new and directly create new epic without going through a lot of steps. But the reason why I think consistency could be useful is, in 11.11, we would eventually allow user to create child epics from within an epic, instead of going to the older route of creating epic first and then add it to an existing epic. So in that issue that we are tracking for 11.11, we would have the tree view, and within that tree view, we would have an action of create a new child epic. User can click it, and we would show input form in line within that list view.
Oh, I see.
So there we only allow user to provide the title. But for example, what if user wants to create an epic in line along with providing start and finish dates? Because currently there is no way to do so. We do have similar UX in case of issue boards, where user can create issue board by visiting just a single board right away. So for example, if you open any existing issue board, and then if you want to create a new board within that page, you can create click new, and then it would open a model pop-up where the user can provide a bunch of parameters, and then click on create, and then it would immediately open that board in place. So if we want similar approach for creating child epics from within an epic, then we can probably leverage at least start and finish dates, because the only reason why I miss a full form right away is that when I'm creating a new epic, chances are I might as well want to provide start and finish dates, because I have a certain context with me.
That's a good point. Yeah.
At the time of creating an epic, and having dates provided along with the creation would be much more faster for me.
I think we should create an issue, Kushal, to chat for. I think, again, I still believe my point that you should just create the object and edit it afterward. But I think there's a lot of nuance there, specifically in the case that you brought up, that I think it deserves some just more UX discussion. And then we might want to consider how to harmonize it with issues, the issue board, as you mentioned. I think with issue board, I would agree that, I don't know if you were saying this with issue board, that you just create a title and then you move on. But with many tools like Trello and stuff like that, you don't go into the issue, or you click a button and there's a modal. So that, I think that's a different experience because you don't lose your place in the issue board. And in this case, you don't lose your place in the epic tree, but you can add details to that object. So do we ever want to do that? Like consider that? I don't know. That's messy. Like for issue board, we have a design where you can edit the metadata without leaving the issue board, and you can, Pedro provided a design where not just the metadata pops in, but the entire issue comes in, but you're still in the board, and so you can edit it. So do we ever want to entertain an idea with like an epic tree, which would be pretty awesome, or even like epic roadmap where you stay in that context, but you can do editing of the information in the object. So I think that would be pretty interesting. So that's why I think we should at least create an issue. So I'll invite you to do that.
Can I ask a question since we are in this topic?
Please. Yeah, this is what this means for.
So one thing that I would like to know from the testing perspective, since I'm new and I don't know a lot about how epics and roadmaps work, you mentioned, Kushal, that so if epics already have start and end dates, they would be automatically rendered in the roadmap view. Does it mean that if an epic has no start or end date, it would not show there? This could be a test case that we could explore.
That is accurate.
So, yeah. So currently, if you open the roadmap page directly, you would notice that next to those 3 preset buttons, quarters, months, and weeks, we have a drop down where we would be able to select the status of epics. But that would only allow you to select whether you want all the epics show up, or whether you want only open epics or closed epics show up. Similarly, we can have epics be rendered without dates. Victor already proposed it. Like, what if we want to show those epics, albeit without the timeline? Like, if dates are not present, we simply don't render the blue timeline bar for that epic, but at least it shows up within the list. Only problem with that approach is that currently list of epics in the roadmap are controlled by a certain sorting order. And that sorting order is handled based entirely on dates. So if an epic doesn't have any date, where do we put it? Whether we put it at the bottom of the list or at the top of the list. And if you are viewing a group which has close to 1,000 epics, which is already the case for our GitLab org group within gitlab.com, where we are already having 900 plus epics. In those cases, if any of the epic doesn't have any dates, it simply doesn't show up. But if we do decide to show up later within the list, where do we put it? Because then we would have to make users scroll all the way through all the items in the list, and then the user will be able to show those epics. Because sorting order currently doesn't allow you to sort based on epic title. It only allows you to sort based on creation date or start or finish dates. So sort order is one sort of a blocker where we do not allow those epics.
I see. Thanks for the explanation.
Good question. Yeah, like definitely, I think we can keep going for this discussion. So let's create some issues, and we can have separate meetings. I think this is we should start revisiting these problems now that we're doing like the tree and things like that. So we'll have more of those similar use cases and UI interactions. I think like maybe half a year ago we were still scrambling just to get the basics in. But now we can be a little bit more like choosy on which areas to tackle, and maybe some of these use cases would be pretty interesting. Okay, so we're still pretty good with time. So I'll go through this really quickly and leave time for Donald and John. 70 to 100%. So if you look at that MR that engineering folks have also probably seen, we're hoping to get this merged soon. But basically, there was this thing about 70% like being ambitious, and so we overschedule so that we can only do 70%. And so I've always didn't like that because it was really weird, and it's apparent. I'm guessing apparently it was confusing to people because like, are you supposed to overschedule? Are you does it just apply for direction issues? Does it apply for all issues? And so I saw a survey that Dahlia sent out. I don't know if it was supposed to go to me because some other people didn't go. It didn't go to some other people apparently. But I think it gone on to engineering at least. And then so I think there was some confusion about that. So most of the team is on board with. We're just going to get rid of that. And I brought up in the product meeting, like we just shouldn't even have a number. It shouldn't say 100% because saying 100% is really saying nothing, because that's sort of the expected. Like if you have a team and you estimate how much work you're going to do, like the assumption is you're going to do all of it. Like that's sort of just baseline, right? Logic. But so I sort of complained a little bit about that, but I took that complaint back because we need the 100% to emphasize it's not 70% now. So the way I like to think of it, let's socialize this. I mean, let's make it clear to the plan team that's what we're doing, and then maybe in half a year we'll just remove the 100% from the handbook, and it'll just be like we'll just be a regular company that we're just trying to finish stuff that we claim we do, which I think is great. And then we can be ambitious and in other ways, or not in other ways, but like we can state that we're ambitious in other ways and not use this weird hack about 70%.
Yeah, I think when you say like other companies, you mean like we just have an ordered backlog that goes like a couple of months into the future, like, you know,
Right.
It represents the next couple of months of what we want to do, and we just go from the top of that, right?
Exactly.
And of course, we as Plan need to build some features into GitLab for that as well. So
There you go. There you go.
but yeah, no, that works for me. I think this month as well. I'm gonna add this to the retro when it comes around. But I underweighted a lot of things, I think. So we didn't get close to 70% by weight, but like taking that away will definitely help. Because right at the moment, there's a load of back-end issues left, and that's mostly my fault because the ones that were already there like were a higher weight than I thought they were, rather than like, you know, the team not actually contributing as much as they normally would. And
so to that brings me to number 5, which is 11.11. I've been reviewing that in the past since Monday, pretty much, and trying to be actually pretty. I don't know if opposite of ambitious, I guess, but I've been cutting a lot of things from 11.11, so this is actually pretty sparse, and because I truly want to be able to get really close to finishing a sprint of issues, for maybe 2 or 3 reasons. One of them is I'd love the team to be able to just have some satisfaction about that, and not have this. Right now it's clear that we're always going to just move stuff over from one milestone to another milestone. I think it's a really silly exercise that I don't mind doing, but I think it's pretty silly that we do that, and it really defeats the purpose of having a milestone and like estimation. And so I'm really excited.
It also feels much better if you're moving stuff forward than if you're moving stuff
there
backward.
You go.
Like,
exactly.
You know, if you're making something happen earlier than you thought it would, that's great. If you're making something happen later than you thought it would, that's bad for a bunch of reasons.
Exactly. And then I totally agree with that, Sean. And then there's been people that have been saying like, oh, what if we underschedule? That would be terrible. That will slow down. Like that's never happened in the history of GitLab, I'm pretty sure. And furthermore, we will never, at least for the plan team, I can speak of clearly, we will never be in a place that, oh no, there's nothing to do because our designers and product managers haven't figured it out yet. And like, oh no, like I have to work on something that I'm not sure that they want. That will never happen. You can always find something in the backlog. In the next couple of milestones, there's always going to be a bug. There's always going to be something high priority that you know because we're in sync. So that will never happen. So I don't think that to optimize for that is I think pretty silly, at least for the plan team, I would argue, and I expect most people to agree, because there's just so much stuff to do, and it seems that we're always behind, and I don't like that to frame our work in that we don't have the joy of finishing. And I think that there's studies out there for people who do DevOps that said like if you have high morale and stuff like that, that's actually correlated with high performing teams. Like there's high morale, CI/CD, high frequency of deploys. All your tooling is good so that you're not annoyed. There's people that study these things, and so I don't think we're getting satisfaction of finishing a milestone, and we're getting satisfaction of finishing features and releasing amazing things, which I think is great. But as a team together, we can't come together and say like, oh, we did amazing work this past month. This is awesome. And we finished out what we set out to do. Like I've never seen that, right? And so that to me is a shame, because I know we're doing great work. and I know we're not slacking, and I know we're doing the opposite of slacking. I know people are putting in probably more hours. So to be able to, we could have always done this, but now we sort of have this 100% thing, and we can do it officially. So that's why I wanted to push it now, and so that's why 11.11 is purposely cut really thin, because I know there's going to be a lot of overlap from 11.10, and I'm trying to make room for that. And also, this leads to number 6, Donald, which is B. I actually removed this from 11.11, so I don't know what you want to say about number 6, but if we need to bring that back into 11.11, let's talk about that. But that's one of the ones that I actually just cut. So go ahead, Donald.
Okay. Yeah, first off, Victor, completely agree with you on everything you just said. And excited to be able to, I mean, we could also use this release as kind of a benchmark of how many, it'll just help with estimation in the future. So I'm okay with us having less stuff and being able to pull stuff from the backlog when we get to that point, like toward the end of the release, end of 11.11. Okay, so the only question I actually had was for, and we may already have an answer to how we do this or how we have done this in the past, but UX issues, I called out 2 there. You said B was moved, so we don't have to talk about that one, but like the scope labels restyled, I don't know, like, is that UX ready? Do we have a timeline of when that will be ready? I'm trying to figure out if I should wait it for the front end, if we'll even be able to get to it. And I know Annabelle's not here anymore, and she's the one that issue is assigned to. But how have we done that previously? Are we trying to get like a release ahead on the majority of the UX issues?
I think we moved away from that to say like we don't do like product discovery or an issue that's only a UX deliverable. We had that for a while. I think that's worked well. I can't speak from the rating perspective because I've been avoiding participating too much in that. So maybe that will impact it. But what's happened up to now, as you mentioned, Annabelle's not here, but we've actually just slotted issues into milestone, even though like UX wasn't complete. Usually like we have an idea and it's like, there is a concept, you know, maybe I'll have like a really ugly balsamic thing. And then maybe Annabelle has like 1 or 2 designs. But we've actually moved to a direction where we've put things into a milestone where it was half-baked from a UX perspective. I think that's worked well because I haven't had an expectation that it needed to be delivered. So in this new world of, if we wanted to hit 100%, do we change that? So maybe that's a separate discussion that we should have. So I don't know, because I have seen situations where within a milestone, we had a great UX conversation and we delivered the feature all at once. And I mean, I think that's optimal. So I would like to continue to do that. But if that's sort of, I don't know, like, because but you might say then let's split up UX and front end work. But then if we do that, does that mean that the issue was too big in the first place? Right? If the issue was too big in the first place, then, or maybe another way to do it is, I don't know. I think we need a UXer here to comment on that. So maybe we can.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I agree. We should hold off on this conversation until we do have someone from UX. But it also kind of relates or goes into the way we separate front end and back end. I don't think we have a set way. Definitely not in the organization, but even on the plan team of when an issue involves both back end and front end, do we split up? I mean, I've done it different ways at previous places. Like with Jira, you would just create a subtask, and then as a team, we would probably weight the entire issue or story together. But then we'd be able to track the front end and back end work on separate like sub issues. I don't know, like I've seen us do it, you know, create another issue for front end, but then not have any weight on it, or like I don't think we have a consensus on how we're doing that. So we should probably have a conversation. Definitely think UX should be involved in that also.
Yeah. Let's. I do have to run in a bit, so but yeah, let's go ahead and set that up, Donald. You can pull me in as optional even. But I think that should really be driven between you, Sean, and UX on how you want. I'm flexible.
Yeah.
I don't mind the extra issues.
Hey, I'm here, but like I'm not totally up to the process as well. So I think, yeah, I'd love to chat with you, Donald, and we could kind of think about how we want it to work in the future, right? Especially because I'm new. I'm totally up to building a new process here.
That sounds good, Alexis. I like it. So, John, the floor is all.
So, Victor, all right, I want to do a quick share and share with you guys something that we've been working on. This is good for the recording. This one is really cool. So earlier this year, Gartner started a Magic Quadrant process, which included asking customers for reviews. And when they do that, they put those reviews into a tool that they call Gartner Peer Insights. Let me show you what Gartner Peer Insights says about the work we do. You should see my screen. This shows products reviewed in the last 12 months. Notice GitLab has 39 reviews about enterprise agile planning tools. We have an overall 4.5 rating. If I sort, I don't care how you look at this data, this is awesome data for us. We have the third most reviews on this site for GitLab, for enterprise agile planning tools. This is a reflection of the work you all have been doing to build and develop, plan, and to get us there. It's worth checking out. It's worth looking at and reading. It's awesome. It makes me feel good. I look at it every day to see how we're doing, and I want to make sure you saw it too. And
so all of these reviews are, sorry, just so I understand, John, all of these reviews are specifically about GitLab's planning, or are these reviews, so is it reviews about GitLab, the product, and because GitLab does enterprise agile planning, they show up in this section, or is it, are these specifically about the planning part?
So they're supposed to be. If you search for GitLab, they actually have us in two different sections, one for application release orchestration and also for the enterprise agile planning tools. I think the way they do this is we end up in the section based upon when they start a Magic Quadrant. And it's up to the user who's doing the review to decide where they're going to align with us. So, you know, some of these are more product. There's not a strong, rigorous set of rules that enforces it one way or the other. So it's a little everything. But it's still awesome to see.
Yeah, no, that's still great. Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah. And in fact, on the enterprise, on the application release orchestration, which was last year, we ended up winning the Customer's Choice Award because we had so many reviews. And we kind of overwhelmed them on that. So I don't know if we're going to get to that level with the enterprise agile, but it's awesome to see this coming. So Victor, can we stop the recording? I want to talk about something else.